And first, I'll introduce the group members of Group 5. They are Liu Jingyue, Li Xingru, Wang Yujue, Zhu Shijing, Wen Xiaoheng, and me, Lu Wanru. Our topic is data collection and analyzing, and each group member will deliver their presentation from the concepts, significance, specific data collection and analyzing in quantitative and qualitative and mixed method research, and also data interpretation. So let's get started. First, I'm going to start with my part. And in the introduction part, I'm going to, I would like to give you some general idea of data collection and analyzing. And I divided my part into 3 aspects. They are significance of data, the types of data, and the steps of data collection. And here I quote a diagram from Creswell's book, Educational Research, Planning, Conducting, and Evaluating Qualitative and Quantitative Research. Here it shows the characteristic of quantity and quality research. We can see that after we identify a research problem, review the literature, and selecting participants or sampling, the time that we need to deal with data can account for a great proportion of the whole process. So we can see that data is of paramount significance in research as it forms the foundation for generating knowledge, making informed decisions, and drawing meaningful conclusions. Here I outline some key aspects highlighting the significance of data in the research. And I gave some very detailed explanation, but we'll see it briefly. The first one is evidence-based decision-making, and the next one is exploration and discovery. And objective and transparent analysis. This one is pretty important because we need to get rid of some biased personal perspective out of the research. And the first one is quantitative and qualitative understanding. And this is exactly what we are going to talk about in our group's presentation. And next, there are statistical inferences and generalizability. Referring to generalizability, as for the former groups has talked about the pilot study, we can see that we can use the findings of pilot study to generalize the finding of this kind of study to a larger scale of research. And the sixth one is formulating and testing hypothesis. Next, continuous learning and improvement, and the final one is informing policy and decision making. This is more related to our life because policymakers rely on the data to develop evidence-based policy and strategies that can really solve the social challenges and improve the outcomes. Since this course is curriculum evaluation, we should know that data is also play a very essential role in curriculum evaluation, because in curriculum evaluation, the data collected is usually used to answer specific research question or to evaluate specific aspects of the curriculum. For example, data can be used to determine whether the curriculum is meeting its intended goals, whether it is appropriate for the learners, or whether it needs to be revised. And there are many methods of data collection that can be used in curriculum evaluation. This kind of evaluation helps educators to determine the effectiveness of a curriculum and identify the areas that require improvement. But researchers should be very wise to select the method based on the type of data that they need and the purpose of the evaluation. So now let's explore the types of data briefly. In research, data can be categorized into 2 primary types, which are quantitative data and qualitative data. Qualitative data can also be called categorical data. It provides a descriptive, non-numerical understanding of the research subject, and it focuses on the capturing individuals' perspectives, experiences, behaviors, and social context, or describing qualities or characteristics of a phenomenon. And common methods to collect qualitative data can be interviews, observations, focus group discussion, document analysis, or open-ended survey responses, just like we sometimes can do some questionnaire. And the examples are like interview transcripts, observational field trips, for example, detailed description and interpretation of observation made by researchers in natural or controlled settings, and textual data, audio or video recordings, also visual data, for example, photographs, images, or visual representations that can offer additional context and insights into the research subject. Qualitative data, to be further talked about, can be divided into nominal and ordinal data. These two kind of data can also be seen when we want to use some computer programs such as SPSS. Nominal data represents the categories without talking about ranking, for example, gender, color, or types of vehicles. But ordinal data represents category with a specific order or ranking. For example, in questionnaire, we always are given a question and we are required to give our agreement scale, like choose from strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree to strongly disagree, or choose our education levels from elementary, high school, bachelor, master to final PhD. There is obviously a ranking here. And next, quantitative data. Quantitative data can also be called numerical data because it refers to numerical information that can be measured. And it is always objective and allows for precise calculations and statistical inferences. It can be further divided into discrete and continuous data. Discrete data consists of whole numbers or counts that cannot be subdivided further. For example, the siblings that you have or the numbers of correct answers on a test. Continuous data, on the contrary, can take any value within a specific range from its max value to its minimum value. For example, height, weight, temperature, or time. And to be further talked about, continuous data can be further divided into interval and ratio data. These two kind of data are both related to scale, but the most significant difference between these two is that internal data doesn't have a meaningful 0 point, such as IQ, SAT scores, but ratio got a really meaningful 0 point, like weight, height, and income. Beside all of this, quantitative data, there are two concepts that we can always see while we talked about quantitative data, that they are descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. But I will not say too much about this because our group member will explain more details. But just be aware that descriptive and inferential statistics are less commonly used in qualitative research. However, in mixed method research, while both qualitative and quantitative data are combined, these two kind of statistics can be employed to analyze and integrate the quantitative component to the research. Next, I would like to talk about other branches of data, which are primary data and secondary data. I believe many of us are very familiar with this. Primary data, of course, refers to the original data that are collected firsthand by the researchers, specifically for their research objectives. It is always collected through direct interactions with participants. And some examples are like surveys, experiment, observations, interviews, and focus group discussions. The advantage of primary data is that the researchers can have a very high level of control over the data collection process to ensure that the data aligns closely with the research objectives. But the disadvantage can be also clear because it is very time-consuming, costly, and may require ethical considerations, such as obtaining informed consent from participants. Then secondary data. Compared to primary data, secondary data refers to data that has already being collected by someone else for a different purpose, such as databases, government records, published reports, academic journals, or previously conducted research studies. And I'll also give some examples. In the examples, there is a publicly available datasets. And this can be very familiar to us because just like our government from the finance, administration, they always release some data for us to consult. And the advantage secondary data can be that it can save cost and time, as researchers do not need to collect the data themselves, and it allows for large-scale analysis, historical comparisons, and exploration of new research questions. But the disadvantage is that researchers should not blindly choose to believe the secondary data. They need to be wise and critically evaluate the quality, reliability, and relevance of the secondary data to ensure its suitability for their research objectives. So now we know pretty much several kinds of data. Let's get a general idea of the steps of data collection. The basic idea of collecting data in any research study is to gather information from various sources to address the questions being asked in the study. And here I also quote a table from Creswell's book, and it shows the steps in data collection both in qualitative data and quantitative research and in mixed methods research. And here I outlined some steps in data collection and analyzing. First, you need to define your research objectives. This will guide your data collection process. And then determine the data collection method. Choose the most appropriate method or combination of methods to gather data based on your research objectives. Then develop a data collection plan. This includes identifying the target population, determining the sample size, and selecting the appropriate sampling technique. Then design data collection instruments. Ensure that your instruments are reliable, valid, and align with your research objectives. Then protest your instruments. Before fully implementing your data collection plan, conduct a small-scale pilot study to test your instrument. Make sure it works. And then you should obtain necessary permissions and ethical considerations. Then implement the data collection. Just carry out the planned data collection activities. After that, organize and store the data. You can create a system to organize and store your collected data. This can involve, for example, digital files, databases, or physical records. After that, clean and pre-process the data. Pre-process the data as necessary, such as coding qualitative data and transforming variables for quantitative data analysis. Finally, analyze the data and interpret the findings, then report and share the results. Just remember that these steps are general guidelines, and the specific of your data collection process may vary depending on the nature of your research discipline and research design. So this is all my part. Next, let's welcome our next group member.
Okay, thanks, Wanru, and good afternoon, doctor and everyone. Next page, please. My name is Wen Xiaoheng, and my talk is about quantitative data, and I'll present it within 5 parts: introduction, types, and collection and analysis of quantitative data, and advantages and limitations of it. So first of all, let's begin with what is quantitative data. Next page, please. Quantitative data refers to numerical data that can be measured or counted, and it always answers the questions like how many, how much, what percentage, and how often. So as you can see, here are some examples of quantitative data such as age, height, weight, income, group size, and so on. Next, please. And there are two types of quantitative data. There are discrete data and continuous data. And the discrete data only particular numbers such as number of members in a team, number of questions in a test paper, and the shoe size number. And about the continuous data, it can be any numeric value such as the daily temperature of a place, height of a baby, and wind speed. Next page, please. And the discrete data is typically most visualized with a tile chart, pie chart, or bar graph. Take this bar graph as an example. It shows that employees at largest companies in the United States. And we can easily say that the Walmart has the largest number of employees, and the CVS Health has the fewest employees in their company. Next page, please. And continuous data can take any value and varies over time. As you can see in this line graph, it shows that average New York City temperatures by month. And in this line graph, we can clearly see the trend of temperature in the New York City around the year. Next, please. And the quantitative data collection has 6 methods. The first one is about surveys. Surveys involve asking a set of standardized questions to a large number of people. And the second is about experiments. It involves manipulating one or more variables and observing the effects on a specific outcome. And the third one is about observational studies. It involves observing and collecting data on a specific phenomena without intervening or manipulating any variables. Next, please. And the fourth one is about the secondary data analysis. It involves using existing data that was collected for a different purpose to answer a new research question. And the fourth one is about physiological measures. It involves collecting data on biology or physiology process, such as heart rate, blood pressure, or brain activity. And the last method is about computerized tracking. It involves collecting data automatically from electronic sources, such as social media, online purchases, or website analysis. And the next part is about quantitative data analysis. First of all, we need to know what is quantitative data analysis. It can be defined as a process of analyzing data that is number-based or data that can easily be converted into numbers. And we can divide quantitative data analysis into two statistics. One is about descriptive statistics. It is used to describe a data set. It helps understand the details of your data by summarizing it and finding patterns from the specific data sample. And as you can see, here are some of the methods about descriptive statistics, such as mean, media, mode, percentage, range, and so on. And another statistics is inferential statistics. It aims to make predictions or highlight possible outcomes from the analyzed data obtained from discrete statistics. And here are also some methods about it, such as ANOVA and factor analysis, cluster analysis, SWOT analysis, and so on. Next, please. And here are some 4 steps of quantitative data analysis. First step is about validating data. In this step, we have to know, is the data relevant? Is it free of personal bias? There are common questions that we must ask before set out to analyze the data. After that, we move on to the second step, which is data cleaning. Once the data has been validated for accuracy and bias, we must edit the data for consistency and relevancy. And next, move to the third steps is about analyze the data. Look for descriptive statistics such as mean, media, and percentage, and establish a common pattern of evaluation. And after that, we can move on the fourth step. It is interpret the results. In that step, we need to transform the data so that it can be easily understood by key stakeholders. Next, please. And here are some of tools that we usually use to quantitative data analysis. Next, please. And in the last part, I'll mention about advantages and limitations of quantitative data. For advantages, there are 5. The first one is objectivities of it, because it is based on measurable and observable variables. The second one is about precision. The third one is about replicability. It is easier to replicate research studies using the same or similar data. The next one is about generalizability. It data allows researchers to generalize findings to a large population. The last one is about efficiency. And also it has some limitations, such as it is difficulty in capturing qualitative aspects such as emotions, attitudes, and motivations. And the second limitation is about simplification of complex phenomenon. And the third is it is limited depth. Quantitative data is often limited to predetermined variables and questions. And it also possibility of bias. The collection and interpretation of quantitative data can be influenced by bias. The last limitation is about lack of flexibility. Quantitative data collection methods may not allow for changes or adaptations in the research process. So that's all about the quantitative data parts. Next, Jingyue, please.
Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about qualitative data, and there are 3 parts. Part 1, definition. So we are going to talk about what is qualitative data. And part 2 is qualitative data collection. And part 3 is qualitative data analysis. Now let's look at the definition first. Next slide, please. Qualitative data consists of direct quotation from people about their experience, opinions, feelings, and knowledge obtained through interviews. And number 2 is detailed descriptions of people's activities, behaviors, actions recorded in observations, and excerpts, quotations, or entire passages extracted from various types of documents. So we can see what is qualitative data. Now let's look here. How can we collect data? Next slide, please. And there are three methods to collect data. And number 1 is interview. That is the most common form. Number 2 is observation. I'm going to talk about how and what to observe. And number 3 is documents and artifacts. About mining data from documents and artifacts. First, let's talk about interview. Next slide. Now, according to structure, we can divide interview data into 3 types. Number 1 is highly structured interview. That means it is actually an oral form of a written survey. Questions and orders in which they are asked are determined ahead of time. And number 2 is semi-structured interview. And then in this type of interview, either all the questions are more flexibility, worded, or the interview is a mix, or more analyze structured questions. And number 3 is unstructured interview. So that means particularly used when the researcher doesn't know enough about a phenomenon to ask relevant questions. And next slide. And during the interview, asking a question is very important. And there are 6 types of questions. Number 1 is experience and behavior questions. For example, what did you do? What activity did you do? What experience do you have? And number 2 is opinion and value questions. For example, what does he or he thinks about the situation? And number 3 is feeling questions. How do you feel? Just like that, do you feel sad, happy? Like that. And next one is knowledge questions. So what knowledge do you know about the research or about the situation? And next one is sensory questions. That is more specific questions. For example, who, when, what, problem. So that is more specific. And the last one is background and the demographic questions, such as age, income, and so on. Now, let's go on. Next one, let's look at number 2, observation. Observation. Now, we know observations are common in many types of qualitative research. And observation can be distinguished from interviews in 2 ways. First, observation takes place in the setting where the phenomenon of interest naturally occurs rather than a location designed for the purpose of interviews. And second, observation data presents a first-hand encounter with the phenomenon of interest rather than a second-hand account of the world obtained an interview. So how and what do we observe? Let's move on to the next slide. What to observe? There are 6 important factors, and number 1 is the physical setting. So what is the environment? And number 2 is the participants. Who are very important in the research? And number 3 is activities and interactions. How is the interaction and what do they do during the observation? And number 4 is conversation. Who talks? Who listens? And what is the content of the observation? What is the content of the conversation? And next one is subtle factors. You can see something you didn't expect. And number 6 is your own behavior. For example, what's your role? What do you do during the observation, and what do you think? So that is your own behavior. And now let's turn to the next page. And let's look at the process of collecting data through observation. There are 3 steps. And number 1 is gaining the confidence and permission. So we need to get the permission and entry the observation. And next one is data collection. We need to have a great concentration to observe intently. And last one is exist. That is very difficult, actually. And we need to choose less frequently, and then we can exist the observation totally. And now let's look at another one is relationship between observer and observed. And number 1 is complete participant. And number 2 is participant as observer. Observer, that means everyone know you have the task of observer, but you take part in all the activities. And next one is observer as participant. So observer, that means the task of observation is more important than the role of participant. And the last one is complete observer. Okay, now let's move next method. Next method is mining data from artifacts and documents. And as we know, documents and artifacts are also sources of data in qualitative research. And documents and artifacts are in fact a ready-made source of data easily accessible to the imaginative and the resourceful investigator. And these types of data sources can exist in both a physical setting and online setting. Next slide, please. Now let's look here. There are 3 types of documents and artifacts. For example, public records, and number 2 is personal documents, and next one is popular culture documents, and next one is visual documents. Number 5 is physical material and artifacts, and number 4 is researcher-generated documents and artifacts. Here I want to focus on researcher-generated documents and artifacts. That means you didn't have any idea before the observation, but before the research, and you generate some new idea and generate a theory, a new theory. Okay. Now let's go on. Now, next part is qualitative data analysis. So why do we do data analysis? Because we need to answer the research questions. And qualitative data analysis is process of gathering, structuring, and interpreting qualitative data to understand what it presents. Okay, now, and there are 5 common methods of qualitative data analysis. And number 1 is content analysis. We need to focus on the content. What is the content about? And number 2 is narrative analysis. Here, narrative analysis, we need to focus on the story. Because a narrative, that means somebody tells the story. And next one, discourse analysis. And the number 4 is thematic analysis. Thematic, there you need to find the common, you need to coding the data and find the theme of the research. And next is grounded theory. Grounded theory, that means maybe you need to generate a new theory. Okay, next slide, please. Here I will introduce 5 steps of qualitative data. So step 1 is gathering and collecting your qualitative data. And number 4 is organizing and connecting into your data. And number 3 is coding your qualitative data. Coding is very important, and it's the important factor when you analyze your data. And next one is analyzing the qualitative data for insights. Last part is reporting on the insights derived from your analysis. Now that's all part of my part. Next one, let's welcome my friend Wang Yujue.
Okay. Hello everyone. My part is merging qualitative and quantitative data in mixed research methods. Next, please. The content includes an introduction, data collection phase, data analysis phase, advantage and disadvantage, and conclusion. Okay, in both mixed methods designs, qualitative and quantitative data were integrated through a transformation process. 2 strategies of qualitative and quantitative collection describe data sets and introduce procedure by which they can be combined. Some advantages of mixed methods designs are summarized, and disadvantages inherent in quantifying qualitative data in mixed methods studies are described. Next, please. Data collection phase. First, concurrent design. As shown in Figure 1, structured surveys are divided into open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. And the collected qualitative data will be analyzed by NVivo software and then output by binary codes and ordered variables to obtain a data set. And the collected quantitative data was analyzed by SAS software to obtain a data set. The data sets of both parts are merged based on unique corresponding identifiers, and finally tend to the final analysis. Next, please.
And sequential design. In sequential designs that collect quantitative data first, can use statistical methods to determine which findings to add in the next phase. As shown in Figure 2, this will consist of two flexible and iterative data collection phases. The first phase is to collect survey data through closed-ended questions. The second phase will be followed by in-depth interviews analyzed by NVivo software. And then the second phase in Access, code output for categorical variables. Then the data from the two phases were merged based on unique corresponding identifiers, and finally analyzed by SAS software. Next, please. Based on the research design described earlier, qualitative researchers need to deal with large amounts of qualitative data. They can use NVivo to convert individual responses to open-ended survey and interview questions into a series of code response categories, which in turn are codified into binary codes and integrated into the relevant survey responses. This process involves 5 analytical steps. First, enter survey data into an Access database. The process is simple and similar to the process used to manage any structured database. Second, use NVivo to analyze qualitative data for codes or topics. These codes will then develop into qualitative response categories for input into a second Access database. Third, the two databases are linked by key informant identification numbers to ensure that each record contains investigative and in-depth interview data. Fourth, the coded qualitative data will then quantified as dichotomous variables, a 0 or 1 based on the absence or presence of each code response. And fifth, analyze the association using SAS. Next, please. This part is advantages. In a concurrent design collection and analysis of qualitative responses can augment and explain complex or contradictory survival responses. And in sequential design, structured surveys and open-ended key data collection and analysis can provide important information during the iterative analysis process, such as emergent and unexpected themes. And these insights could be missed without an iterative combination of structured and unstructured data. Next, please. And these disadvantages, the depth and the flexibility of the data will be lost when the qualitative data is quantified. Since the qualitative data is fixed and one-dimensional, they cannot be changed due to new insights in the analysis. Therefore, the rich qualitative data may become one dimension. And analyzing, encoding, and integrating unstructured data with structured data is a complex and time-consuming process. And quantitative data researchers cite limitations that involve statistical measures to quantify qualitative data. First, this data is susceptible to collinearity problems. Second, the need to collect and analyze qualitative data may force researchers to reduce sample size, which may reduce reasonable use of statistical procedures, especially more rigorous measure of associated parameters such as t-test and ANOVA. Next, please. Mixed methods designs can offer some advantages when exploring complex research, with qualitative data providing insight into survey response and statistical analysis providing a detailed assessment of response. However, the analytical process of combining qualitative and survey data by quantifying qualitative data can be complex, time-consuming, and expensive, and thus may lead researchers under a tight budget or time constraints to consider deeply whether mixed method research is an option. This is my part. Next, Xinru, please.
Okay, I will share the data interpretation and reporting. Okay, the next page. It's divided into 6 parts. Okay, the next page. The first part is introduction. Data interpretation and reporting play an important role in a wide range of fields. They provide a system and structured way to analyze and understand the information contained in data. It enables organizations and individuals to make the right statement and take the right actions. Okay, the next page. The next part is understanding data. Data interpretation is the process of examining data using different analysis methods and drawing related conclusions. It helps research compose information, while several types of process and implementing depending on the nature of personal data. The two most common types are quantitative and qualitative analysis. Okay, the next page. A different type of data and their characteristics is divided into 2 parts. The first one is numerical data and categorical data. The first one, numerical data, consists of quantitative values. The first one is discrete data, consists of count of finite possible values. Example include the number of students in a class or the number of cars in a parking lot. The next is continuous data, represent on a continuous scale, which can take any value within a given row. Examples include temperature, height, or weight. The categorical data representing qualitative features. The first one, nominal data, represent the categories that have no fixed order. Example include gender, color, or car type. The next one is ordinal data, represent type with an order or rank. They have relative prioritization of
or ranks, but no specific number different. Example include rating like low, medium, or high. Okay, the next page. The next part is data interpretation method. It includes the quantitative data and the qualitative data. The quantitative data divided into three parts. The first one is mean. When dealing with the data set, the mean will represent the center views of a particular set of numbers. The next one is a standard deviation. The standard deviation shows the distribution of response around the means. It describes the degree of consensus in the responses. The last is frequency distribution. This is a measure of how often a response happens in a data set. It can determine the number of times a particular ordinal scale response. The qualitative data also divided into three parts. The first one is observation. Dispatching could be the amount of time spent in an activity, the type of activity, and the method. The next one is focus group, grouping people into groups and asking their questions to generate a discussion about a research topic. The last one is interviews. One of the best calling method of data. It can be grouped by the mean or topic. The interview approach allows for highly focused data. Okay, the next page. The next part is effective data report. The data report is the process of gathering information and organization it into an easy to read form. You can use data reports to answer questions and gather local evidence to help you make decisions. Okay, the next page. The next part is how to write a data report. It's divided into 4 steps. The first step is determine the report's purpose. Determine the subject and scope of report you are writing. Think about what questions you want to ask. You want to answer with the data report. How you want to use the report, and it means items. The next step is define your data source. When writing data reports, you often need to gather information from a variety of data sources. The next step is compile the data reports. Start writing data to a form of your choice. The word recensor and separate sheet tool often have features that can be used to create groups and tables. The last step is edit the report. uh, review your report one last time and add it to check the data. Remove any mistakes too important in your writing. Edit your document to make sure they appear on the page of Square. Okay, the next page. The last part is conclusion. In conclusion, data interpretation and reports play important roles. Data interpretation involves examining data, use various analysis methods to draw conclusions. Data reports focus on the presenting finding in a clear and meaningful manner. Okay, my part is over. It's turn to my next friend, Shijing.
And I will introduce the last part of our group, the summary. Next. In summary, we learned that there are many types of data collections and analysis methods, such as interviews, questionnaires, quantitative analysis, and qualitative analysis, and so on. At the same time, we also know that data collection and analysis can help us make a clear decision and verify high-fidelity objective analysis, and this refine our research questions. Next. Secondly, in course evaluation, data collection and analysis can also help researchers evaluate students' learning more objective and scientifically. Researchers can choose appropriate data collection and evaluation method according to the type of data required and the purpose of evaluation. And next. And if you want to confirm or test something, such as through a hypothesis, you can use quantitative research because of quantitative analysis has a characteristics of objectives, accuracies, repeatabilities, and universalities. Quantitative research is widely used in the field of natural science and social science, and usually requires a large amount of data analysis. At the same time, due to the lack of spontaneity and depth, it is not suitable for use in some complex situation. And the next, if you want to understand something such as experiences, you can use qualitative research. Because of qualitative research is more targeted. It is not limited by quantitative method and it is more flexible. Therefore, qualitative research is mainly suitable for understanding social phenomena in nature environment and understand the experience of the researcher. At the same time, it will be limited in the implementation due to the disadvantage of large sample size and the lack of preferences. Next. Therefore, due to the corresponding limitations of both quantitative and qualitative research method, so mixed research methods have emerged, where quantitative and qualitative data are integrated through a transformations process. It combines the advantage of quantitative and quantitative analysis. to explore more complex research questions. And next. Finally, data interpretations and reporting are also important. Data interpretation can help researchers understand the information contained in the data and draw relative conclusions. Data reporters are represented in a clear and concise manner, make them easy to understand. That's all of our group presentation. Thank you for your listening. And if you have any questions, welcome to ask.